thank you very much, everyone, for coming and giving up your time on a Saturday morning. My name's Sam Kaluba-Will. I'm the head of Greater Manchester High, and I'm just going to speak for a couple of moments about the Parent Power project, how we arrived at where we are today. Just to give a potted history, Greater Manchester Higher, the partnership that I oversee, is a collaboration of universities and colleges working across Greater Manchester. We're funded by the UniConnect programme as part of the Office for Students, and we recently found that we will be getting funded for another year at least. So it's really positive news. We are just over 4 years into this programme, working with nearly 100,000 young people from across Greater Manchester to provide impartial advice and guidance about higher education routes and options into different careers. Really, we see the work that we do as part of a bigger picture to improve social mobility, which links very much to the reason why Oldham was selected as an opportunity area, which is another collaboration between ourselves, and you'll see some of the logos on the screen here today. The Women's Chai Project, you'll meet Najma Khalid in just a moment. Citizens UK, also King's College London and Trinity College Cambridge are also involved in the Parent Power project. We work with a group of fantastic, motivated, engaged parents from across 5 schools in Oldham. They've been identified as their children, their young people have been identified as high achieving young people, but potentially may face different obstacles or barriers to success. Our work as a programme has supported the parents in their own information gathering and their ability to navigate some of the choices and crossroads for their young people. And I think some of the things that we've seen, we've borrowed heavily from a model that was delivered by King's College London in partnership with Citizens UK. And we're very grateful for the support of James Asfer and Jimmy Pickering, who are both part of the steering group of this project, and taking some of the learning and also sharing with the parents from that group. We're really, really proud to see that this partnership has grown into something possibly greater than we thought it was. And it's one of maybe the hidden successes of the pandemic, that working in a virtual way has actually enabled us to collaborate over different geographies. But here today, we're very much here to talk about Oldham, and from our parents, from our Parent Power project, to have their say and to speak to some of the leaders. We're really grateful to Debbie Abraham, MP for Oldham East, and Council Leader Sean Fielding, Cabinet Member Shahid Mushtaq, and also Sama Khalil, Youth Mayor. I'm not sure if we do have Andy Burnham in the room, but we have invited him, and we are expecting him. So I know he's obviously a very busy man any time of the year. I'd imagine over the last few days he's had a fair amount of interviews. So thank you very much. I'm going to now pass back over to Debbie Abraham, our Oldham MP for Oldham East and Saddleworth, who will then introduce our panel members. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure and a real honour to have so many guests in the room, and for our parents to have access to these people. So thank you very much, Debbie. Over to you.
Good morning, lovely to be here. And I was just saying, how impressed I am, your commitment on a Saturday morning to be doing this. So as has been explained, my name's Debbie Abrahams. I am the MP, the Member of Parliament for Oldham East and Saddleworth. I'm not a councillor. I need to make that point absolutely clear. But I have some excellent councillors with me. I am delighted to introduce Councillor Sean Fielding, the leader of Oldham Council. Also Councillor Shahid Mushtaq, who's the Cabinet Member for Education. And we also have, I hope, Sama Khalil, who's the Oldham Youth Mayor, and recently received I think she was the youngest person to get the BEM award. So really, really well done, Sama. And I know we've got lots of questions to get through over the next hour or so. So let's start those if we may.
Our first question is from Geordie Clough to Debbie Abrahams. Geordie, I'll pass you on to Geordie.
Hi, morning.
Morning.
You can all hear me, right? So my question is, when we moved to the Oldham area, we were disheartened that the current youth offering, Madlow, was unsafe for children. After giving it a few tries, my children suffered antisocial and threatening behaviour, including bullying to steal their money and phones. I'm left with the opinion that establishments such as these are unregulated, unsafe, and not providing what counsellors believe they are. What do you say to parents who feel that their children are unsafe in the Oldham area, even when they're attending council-funded after-school groups?
Thank you for that question, Jodie. And I'm ever so sorry that your children experience that. Nobody in whatever setting, whatever age, should feel intimidated or bullied like that. And it's a particular concern if this is happening in terms of services that are being provided locally. As I say, I'm not a counsellor. I don't have responsibility for these services. If an inquiry like this came into my office, I would seek to make representations to the council to find out exactly what is going on and what is their policy around that. So I'm going to pass this on, if I may, to Shahid, who is a counsellor and who does have responsibility for these areas. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Debbie, and thanks, Jodie, for your question. Yeah, again, I'm sorry to hear about your experience. Clearly, what we are aware of is staff and volunteers are trained. Clearly, safeguarding will be covered within that training. If things like this do arise, I mean, when you say council supported, council does fund it, Madlow, but not completely. So they do get the vast majority of the funding from other sources as well. But you're right, we do provide funding for it. But what you're talking about is an operational issue. And if these things do come to light, it is important, I think, in the first instance, to raise it with Madlow themselves, because as a politician, I'm very conscious that sometimes when there is an issue in a local area or maybe in a ward, residents take straight to social media. I think the process should always be give the organisation or the individual an opportunity to have it raised with them and an opportunity to try to do something about it. So that would be my first bit of advice. If clearly it is something quite serious, such as what you're suggesting, then of course raise it with the council as well. We can speak to them directly, just like the parents can. And I will take this up. I'm sure Sean is also on the call, the leader of the council, so I'm sure he'll have a view on this as well. So yes, we will raise this. It's clearly a very important issue. What I will say about Madlow is they are trying to reach out to all sections of the community. There was a bit of a stigma attached to Madlow that they work with a certain group of young people within the community, ones that would be looking to access this kind of thing. But what I am aware of is they send volunteers, they send staff out actually to what would be more challenging young people that might not easily access this kind of provision, which is a positive. Clearly, if they are successful in attracting young people across a broad spectrum, that will create issues such as the ones that you've highlighted. So I think we need a holistic approach to say, look, yes, we are grateful that you are making it an all-encompassing provision, but if these things are in play where your children are experiencing this kind of behaviour, then it needs to be addressed. So you bringing it here, I think, is the right thing, because relevant people are on the call that can look into this. But also, what I'd say is raise it with Madlow directly as well, and give them the opportunity to speak to you. And I don't know if you've done that. You can come back in and let us know if you have and if you've had a response. But yeah, that's my take on the situation.
And maybe Shahid, future Councillor Shahid, in the future wise, we could work together to make our youth services in Oldham safer. We could bring in a meeting with Madlow, with Jodie, with yourself, with Councillor Sean as well. So going on to our next question.
Najma, it's Andy Burnham here. Sorry to jump in on you there, because I'm sort of a bit late joining you all. So morning, everybody. I was just listening to that, and obviously I've got a responsibility here with regard to Greater Manchester Police. So if Jodie wanted to maybe drop an email to Debbie's office, I'll ask the Chief Superintendent just to support Shade and Sean, and just make some inquiries really with Madlow, because we want to, if they've got an issue, we want to help them deal with it, and obviously GMP might be able to provide some support there. It's a brilliant facility, and what you want is confidence in it, that every young person can go there and feel safe, don't you? And if that is kind of undermined in any way, then it's the opposite of what we want to do. So if you want to do that, Jody, I will ask the Oldham policing team to just have a constructive chat, let's say, with Madlow, and to see if we can help sort some of these things out.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Andy.
I'd really like to take that opportunity, so thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you, everyone. Our next question is from Javid Tufail to Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham. Javid, are you there? You're on mute.
Hi, can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Andy. My name is Javid Tufail. I live in Vernet. My son is attending Radcliffe School, and my question for you is, would there be any possibility in the near future to have direct railway lines or train stations in the centre of Oldham, which people in Oldham could use to travel and commute to their chosen cities direct, rather than having to go to Piccadilly or Victoria train station and changing trains from there?
Thanks, Javid. So it's election time, isn't it? And somebody like me should say normally, "Oh yes, we'll do that in a couple of years, Javid." But I'm not going to do that because it wouldn't be honest. The lines obviously were taken to provide Metrolink, and the thing is about Metrolink. Sean was at the Greater Manchester Combined Authority yesterday, and he was talking about this. It's taken a little while, but the numbers using Metrolink out of Oldham now are really building, to be honest, and people are really getting used to using it. TFGM's figures show that as a Metrolink line, it is 6 times more used than it was as a railway line, because it's cheaper. Metrolink's cheaper than trains, don't forget. So that is what we've done. To put in new heavy rail lines, through the centre of Oldham, I couldn't do that. That would be a government decision. And I'm just going to be honest with you, I don't see it happening anytime soon, because Oldham has better connectivity than, let's say, a town like Leigh, which I used to represent in Parliament, which has no train station at all because the lines were taken away in the 60s or 70s. What we are going to do, though, is take things to the next stage with regard to connectivity more generally. So you may have seen on Thursday, we've committed, myself, Sean, and the other 9 leaders of Greater Manchester, or I should say 8 leaders, because one opposed it. We've committed to bringing the buses back under public control. And what that will allow us to do is we decide where the buses go, rather than currently they decide. So at the moment, they compete with Metrolink. They follow Metrolink into the city. When we control the system, we'll be able to have much better orbital connections across the north of Greater Manchester. So it will be ticketed as a single system. So if you were to jump on a tram in Oldham and then jump off and get on a bus to get to your son to get to Radcliffe at school, it will be ticketed as one journey, as they have in London. So that, of course, then would connect you a bit more easily to other train stations like Rochdale or somewhere else where you can get those wider connections to other cities. So a long answer, probably not the answer that you wanted, Javed, but an honest one. But actually, it's a positive story. Greater Manchester is about to undergo a massive change in its transport system, from one which today is fragmented, overpriced, unreliable, to a London-style system where it's integrated. Never forget this, Debbie will confirm this, a single bus journey is £1.55 in London. And for the hour that you've paid that, you can hop on a number of other buses without paying again. What can it be here, £4 or more? And they have a cap on what you can spend in any given day. So if you jump on tubes, buses, trains, you only spend up to £10. Here, you could spend, £30, £40 if you tried to do that. So a big change is coming. It's not the one you're asking for, but I think it will be it will give Oldham a lot greater connectivity than it currently has.
Thank you so much, Andy. And just to also welcome Summer and Andy, I did welcome you, so welcome to Parent Power Oldham. Just to mention to the group, if you have any questions arising from the conversations, do put them in the chat. We'll try and answer them a bit later as well. So next we have Rahila Kosa, and her question is to Debbie Abrahams. Rahila, do you want to just unmute yourself? Rahila?
Hi, Najma. Hi, everyone. To be honest, I've just come off a compulsory conference from my uni, and I've just gone a bit blank, and I can't remember my question. So, it was just
Rahila, in the chat. It's in the chat. So if you open up the chat, it's there.
Oh, right. Just bear with me. Chat. Sorry about this.
No worries, Rahila.
Oh yeah, was it about mental health?
I think it was, yes.
Yeah. So I'm hearing loads of conversations about how mental health is particularly young people has been affected by COVID because they've lost their, the physical social circles that they had.
Yeah.
And they're constantly on their devices, which is a problem for teenagers anyway, as most parents will say. And any of the little bit of time that they went out of the house and had physical contact with others, that's been even further reduced. And I think even before COVID, there was lots of conversations going on about mental health, especially for young people, and how we need to tackle this issue that's growing all the time, and you hear lots of stories about different people. So I was just wondering what, if anything has been thought of from your side of how to tackle these issues, after when schools are back, obviously now face-to-face, physical learning is back. If there's anything in place to tackle these issues.
Thanks, Rahila. And yes, you're absolutely right. Even before COVID, we knew that mental health issues, particularly amongst our young people, were a real problem, and not just within Oldham, but across the UK as well. I think the figures that I recall, 6 out of 10 children are experiencing some form of mental ill health. And 4 out of 10 children, it's severe, so it's in need of clinical support. So that these are pre-pandemic issues that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. And you rightly mention around the online harms that exacerbate that even further. You may know that there's a new bill that's due to come to the House of Commons around ensuring that we have a safer online environment for our young people, but also for adults as well. We know that online harms are an issue for many people, and not just our young people, but we need to be very aware of obviously how they can affect our young people. I just want to mention very, very briefly as well. I mean, there is the stuff that's going on in Oldham that you can draw on if you have particular concerns as a parent. So I can happily forward those details to you. One of the issues that we have found, and again this reflects the underfunding of the NHS over the last 10 plus years, and the lack of parity for mental health services, in spite of then being a legal requirement for that, they're still very, very underfunded. And this is going to be a particular concern. But Oldham CAMS, which provides support for clinical support for young people with mental health problems, do provide an excellent support service there. And I also wanted to mention, I think a few schools within Oldham have signed up to the Healthy Schools programme, which is again another way we can ensure that schools recognise and support. I know many already do, but this is another way of enabling that and ensuring that some bits of how we work can either promote health or they can make it worse. And that doesn't cost money. So how we do things, the processes that we use, and how we engage and empower our young people and people as a whole is very, very important. And my final point is to mention and give credit to Andy in terms of the Inequalities Commission that reported yesterday, which again features and focuses on education and what we can do there about promoting good lives for everybody, including our young people. Thanks very much, Rahila.
Thank you, MP Debbie Abrahams. Our next question is from Jarna Begum to Mayor Andy Burnham. Jarna?
Yes. Hi, my name is Joanna Begum. My question is, along with the digital divide, there are also many parents in Greater Manchester who don't know how to speak English and aren't educated enough to help their children with their schoolwork. This affects minorities in particular. Do you have any solutions for this?
Thank you. Thanks, Jana. I think Sean might want to say something on this, because I'm not doing a politician thing of avoiding the question, because I will answer it, but I think Sean may know a little more of the detail than me about what we are able to do to support people, and actually are doing to support people, because Sean leads on skills for us across Greater Manchester, particularly adult skills. But just to pick up on what you were saying, I mean, firstly on the digital divide, Jana, that is a massive issue that was always there. It's like what Debbie was just saying around mental health. It was always there, but it's really become visible over the last year, because there are a lot of people in Oldham who can't do what we're doing today, because, and this is particularly true of young people, because even if they have a device that allows them to do it, they won't have data connectivity that allows them to, to be fully online. And I'll let you into a bit of a secret in terms of my manifesto. I'm going to be asking Sean and the other leaders to back it soon, but I am going to make a commitment to put all under 25s online, because I don't see how we can connect our young people to opportunity and connect them to the conversation and, help them with their learning and everything really, unless we make sure that they are in the room, if you like, in the digital room. And for me, this issue of digital inclusion, it's always been something we've talked about, but it's always like the kind of afterthought, on the last thing on the agenda. It's never been the first thing on the agenda, and I think it needs to be. And it touches a little on what Debbie was saying about mental health. We do a survey of all year 10s in Greater Manchester. So these are 14 and 15-year-olds, and we asked them about a whole range of things, including mental health. And we did it recently, and the results came back, and it showed that 6 out of 10 14 and 15-year-olds were aware of an online digital service that we launched during the pandemic called Couth. So it's like an everyday mental health support service. I could see a couple of people nodding about that, some of the younger people on the call. And that tells me something, that young people are crying out for very different types of support that sometimes we're not providing them with through the traditional ways of providing services. And I think we've got to have a massive rethink about this after the pandemic. And that's what I'm planning to do. Just on the people who don't speak English as a first language, I mean, absolutely crucial question, because how else can people, fully kind of become part of Oldham society or Greater Manchester if you've got that barrier in front of you? So under the adult education budget, we have an ability to do something about this, and Sean has been doing something about this. Sorry to put you on the spot, Sean, but you have, haven't you? And so I'll maybe, if that's okay, hand over the question to Sean now. Thank you, though. Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, thanks, Andy, and thanks for the question. It's a really valid one, both on digital and in terms of language. I was looking down the list, and the one that's got my name next to it is the one where I'm going to get the chance to talk about all the exciting investments we're doing in Oldham, and so I thought I'd got off lightly, but I'm happy to take this question now. So, well, in terms of digital, I will just address that point first, because you did mention it. We do a huge amount of work at Greater Manchester on digital inclusion, and we have had some discussions internally at the council about what might be the future of the way we provide services locally. And one of the things that is going to happen is that Access Oldham and the contact centre is not going to continue to exist in its current form. And lots of people came back to us with feedback on that, saying, oh, what about all of these elderly people that aren't connected and aren't able to access services online? But actually, digital inclusion or digital exclusion doesn't just affect old people. In fact, if I think about the older generations in my own family, they're the ones that have the best laptops and can access the internet and can complete the forms online and are on social media, particularly Facebook. But actually, it's young people that have had the challenge. And as we saw during the pandemic, where they didn't have the right tech to access Google Classroom while the schools were shut. And whilst they might all have one of these, where they can do Snapchat and Instagram and all those sorts of things, in terms of doing very practical things that enable you to get on in life, there was a digital divide that was particularly affecting young people. So that's why Andy's Tech Funding Greater Manchester and the work that Oldham's done locally, along with local businesses, provided lots of young people with tech and with dongles so that they could access the internet and still get online and get access to their learning while the schools were shut. But on the issue of language, it's a really valid one. We know that it is a barrier to parents in Oldham supporting their young people with, as simple as with things like homework. But it also means that many of our young people don't start quite school ready when they walk through the school gates on the first day of term in reception or foundation year, because they don't have the language skills to access the curriculum. And as an opportunity area, that's something that we've been working really hard to address with the additional funding and the expertise that's been brought in as part of that. And there are a number of schemes that we're running. In particular, the one that I'm thinking of is called Making It Real, which is about supporting parents to, when you sat on the bus and you see an advert on the top, it's about pointing that out and getting your child to read it, and about using the English language every day at doing normal things rather than let's sit down and read a book together. That might be quite challenging for some of our parents. And the evidence points to that being quite successful in helping address that language barrier. And he's talked about the adult education budget too. In Oldham, we're really fortunate to still have an adult education service provided in-house by the local authority. Not every council provides that across Greater Manchester. In some places it's commissioned out to private providers. In some places you rely upon the local college. But here in Oldham, we do that in-house. And what we can do with that service is make sure that it provides social value. And it's not just about generating a surplus and making sure that the service can wash its face. And we do use that service to improve language skills of people that don't speak English as a first language. And when I was new as the leader of the council, one of the first services I went to visit was our lifelong learning service. And I went to Oldham Library, and of course it operates out of other places as well, like the Calder Centre and Brighton Library and various other bases. But I went to Oldham Library and I was introduced to some of the learners there that were taking ESOL courses, English as a second language. And there was a woman there that spoke in English to me that told me that she'd come over from Pakistan in the last 5 or 6 years, couldn't speak a word of English, and she was really self-conscious of that, and that's why she enrolled on this course. And as a result of doing that, she could help a child with the homework. She was able to learn to drive, and she'd taken work as well, which had she not had that access to that learning that was provided by the council, that none of those things would ever have happened, and it would have affected both a family and a child's life in terms of its attainment at school. So we do some great work in Oldham, and we need to kind of replicate what we do here across Greater Manchester to support all parents that don't speak English as a first language.
Thank you.
Can I just come in here, Nashma? Is that all right?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you.
Oh, you're very good. Thank you. All I wanted to say is I wanted to make sure that the government takes some responsibility for the cuts that they have put to the ESOL budget. So this is what Greater Manchester and Oldham are doing in spite of the increased financial pressures that they find themselves under. So I know that Oldham has prioritised this and is ensuring that we make access to services for people who don't speak English as a first language. But this isn't this isn't across the board, and this is in the context, as I say, of very savage cuts to council budgets. As I say, not just Oldham but across the country.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy, Sean and Debbie for that. Our next question is from Louise Williams to Councillor Mushtaq. Louise? Louise, are you there? She wasn't.
Yeah, hiya. My name's Louise. We don't actually live in Oldham, but our girls go to Oldham, a school in Oldham. My question is there going to be any help for the parents that are struggling to buy uniforms due to being on furlough, or even at times they've lost the job due to this pandemic? It's just that it's costly for secondary school uniforms, and giving parents, they've spent a lot of money on the uniforms at the start of the term, which haven't been used. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be any help for parents that are struggling for new uniforms.
Officially, without doing the politician thing and going around the houses to give you an answer, officially the answer is no, there's no official scheme or help in that sense, like free school meals, for example. However, we are aware of it, and there's lots of...
I'm doing some... Wait a minute. Sorry, it's just my dogs.
Right. So don't worry. Yeah, so there's lots of schemes going on within the borough by local communities, groups and schools themselves. As you say, you know, the young people have missed half the term, so a lot of the uniforms are in excellent condition. And the cost, we've done a lot of work inside in terms of poverty. So we've done poverty audits, and we've done a colleague of mine, Councillor Kath Ball, has done what's called poverty proofing in schools, and this has come up as an issue, as well as school meals. And there's this disparity between primary and secondary as well, because primary, I think the items are, there's less items. Secondary, obviously, as you say, they're more expensive because, you know, our young people are growing up, the sizes and the logos. So I believe there's a bill as well that's going through Parliament and the House of Lords, which will give official guidance to schools, which will help, I think, because at the moment there is none. And an example of that is the fact that I've been contacted by a local retailer who is based in Oldham, and their business has been affected. And what he said to me was, look, we sell our uniforms significantly cheaper than some of the other retailers. However, some of the schools are basically saying that certain ones, that they're trademarking them and saying certain shops can sell it. So I think that is another element that's probably been missed that we need to visit as well, to say that choice and option needs to be there. But also, as you say, recycling and reusing, which does happen, but there's no holistic, connected approach to it. We're waiting for the bill. Once that bill's happened, then as a local authority, we will look into that. But I think something I want to also stress is it's not vital that the local authority leads on this. I think if there are groups out there, there's a group called Real TIC who are doing some work with clothing. We've spoken to them about school uniforms. Now, they're struggling with space at the moment. They're a fantastic group, and they're really good at engaging parents as well. So I think if we work together, like I said, doesn't necessarily have to be led by the council. We can offer help and coordination, or we can lead on it. That's not an issue either. But it is something post the bill that we will be looking to formalise a bit more, I think.
Thank you. It was just for like the parents that have lost their jobs. So it was just, that's all. Thank you.
Can I just bring in Councillor Fielding? And then iPhone has their hand up as well. I don't know who that is, but they can go next.
Thanks, Nedra. I'll try and be brief because I know we've still got quite a few questions to get through. But on school uniforms, I'm absolutely with you, Louise. I've been on 2 school governing bodies now, and I'm always a hawk on school uniforms because I know how expensive it can be. And sometimes I think the demands that schools place on parents in terms of having, you know, there was one school that I was on for a time that where you had to buy branded football socks for PE for the kids. And I thought, that's crazy, you know. I remember when I live in Failsworth, and I went to Failsworth School, and I went to South Failsworth on Paddock Lane. And I remember going and getting the plain red T-shirt from Newton Market and the plain black sports shorts, and that was acceptable back then. Now, I know schools want to maintain a brand and they want to have an identity, and that's fine. But I do think that sometimes We have to give consideration to ways they can do that without demanding the parents buy what can often be very expensive branded clothing. Now, we've tried to do something in Oldham with Zutty. I think that's the retailer that she might have been referring to, where uniforms are available from, that shopping on Yorkshire Street in Oldham. And you get free alterations, as they understand it, and they even recycle old uniform to try and help parents out a bit. But I do think there is still this barrier around initial cost. And, I'm on a primary school governing body now. I was previously on fail for school governance, but I had to come off because I didn't have the time. I'll still keep fighting this corner until something is done about it nationally, because I completely understand how challenging it is. Unfortunately, there isn't a scheme that we've got locally in Oldham to support people, but the way we've tried to engineer it through a local shop who does the like alterations and recycling, that's, we're doing all we can, but I completely understand your concern, Louise.
Yeah, that's where we go to, Sutter, because the girls go to Oldham in Fellsworth. So, I mean, they're like, you've got to buy these sports socks from there, and they're like, it's a pair of socks, really. You don't need really to have a pair of sports socks. It's just socks.
All of the issues that we're describing now relate to the lack of money that there is for places like Oldham, the fact that individuals and households, families don't have enough income. These are choices. These are choices that are made by the national government. They decide how much money Oldham, how much money Greater Manchester is going to have, how much money you are going to have in your pockets. And they are making choices which are making things worse for us. For people who are on low or middle incomes, whereas they're they're quite happy to make choices that give people on more affluent salaries more income. We must not forget that. Oldham is doing the best, Greater Manchester is doing the best with the resources that they have. Poverty and inequality are political choices, and this government for the last 10 years has made choices which make things harder for you, for your school uniforms, for the parks and playgrounds that you say that you want. We're just not being considered in that way.
Thank you, Debbie. Our next questions are from Geordie and Javed. As they're related, can Geordie go first and then Javed? Both questions are to Sean Fielding. Geordie?
Hello. Yeah, there we go. Hi. My second question is, in many of our Parent Power meetings, we've discussed the Oldham landscape, in particular how the town centre has dramatically changed in the last few decades. How are our children supposed to be inspired by their local area with businesses constantly closing and lack of investment? I feel there is a lack of respect for Oldham as a hometown with antisocial behaviour, fly tipping, graffiti and violence. Are there any plans to improve Oldham and its town centre to reduce behaviours like this as they currently continue to rise?
Thank you, Jodie. Javed, do you want to just ask your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, are there any developments under consideration to revamp the Oldham town centre? If so, what?
Thank you. Councillor Fielding.
Right, two fantastic questions, and I can give some great positive answers to these, even though the beginning was about antisocial behaviour and things. So the first thing I'd say, and this isn't like me, but bear with me because I'm going to sound like a bit of an academic. We are great believers in the broken window theory in Oldham. And the broken window theory, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, is if you leave a place uncared for, if you walk past the broken window or the litter on the floor or the graffiti, then it creates an environment in which that behaviour is almost permissible and encouraged and continues. So what we've done in Oldham is invested a huge amount of money in our enforcement teams to go out and inspect fly tipping and get evidence from it and take action against those that have dumped it, to make sure that we clean off graffiti very quickly, to make sure that we just keep standards high in and around Oldham town centre and as many parts of our borough where we can do. That is challenging in a lot of places. A lot of the land where dumping happens, a lot of the buildings that look the scruffiest are not within the direct ownership of the council, and so sometimes that can take quite a bit of time to take action against whoever owns it and say, you need to tidy this up or we'll see you in court. And quite often they say, oh, well, we'll see you in court then. And it takes months and months to get to the end of that process. But we do everything that we can to try and keep the place looking good, because you're right, you know, if people see around them that the environment is not a happy one, not an attractive one, it has an effect on people's perception of the place, and it influences behaviour of a lot of people. So we do what we can. I absolutely acknowledge there's really real challenges in Oldham. As I said before, I'm sat here in Failsworth, which is halfway between Oldham and Manchester. Many of the residents that I represent as a councillor in Failsworth default to Manchester. They think, why would I go up to Oldham when I can go the other way just as easily? And they constantly tell me, why do you bother trying to invest in Oldham? What's the point? It's not great, it's not even worth it. But I went to Oldham Sixth Form College, and when I went there, I realised that there was a lot of people for whom Oldham is their nearest big town. They don't have the luxury of being able to get into Manchester really quickly. But even if they did, is it really acceptable that we let a place decline and let a place become unattractive and let it not offer opportunities for people, and particularly young people? And no, it's not. It's not acceptable at all. And that's why the council's taken a massive lead, and I can talk about the positive stuff now, on investing in, particularly in Oldham Town Centre, but in all of the towns that make up the Oldham Borough as well. So you might have seen some of the stuff in the paper recently. We are incredibly good at bidding for external funding. We've put in a bid for what's called the Future High Streets Fund, which is a pot that the government set up. And we've got more than £10 million out of that. And that's going to enable us to kit out the Egyptian Room, which is one of the units underneath the Odeon Cinema Complex in the Old Town Hall, into the kind of food hall, Altrincham Market, Stockport Produce Hall type offer. So that'll be something new in Oldham, bringing a vacant space back into use that people will hopefully have pride in. We've also put in a bid for some money to build a new theatre, because the Coliseum Theatre is falling down. But it is a massive draw, and I don't know if there are many people on this call that use the Coliseum Theatre, but it is an enormous draw right across the region, with people travelling into Oldham to go and watch shows that have been not just touring shows that perform there, but have been produced there too. And so we're supporting the construction of a new Coliseum Theatre, which will go somewhere on Union Street or in and around the Spindle shopping centre where Parliament Square is. We've got business grant schemes that support businesses to relocate into Oldham, and we've seen a couple of new units down the bottom of Clegg Street near the Ashton Arms and the Lyceum be occupied as a result of our interventions. We recently bought the Spindle shopping centre in Oldham, which means that we can relocate the falling down Tommyfield Market into some of the vacant space in there, get that place full, get a bit of a buzz about it again, rather than walking through there with all the empty shops, which is depressing. And I'll admit that. I don't walk around with rose-tinted glasses on thinking everything's wonderful in Oldham. We'll be moving our staff into the Spindle shopping centre onto one of the upper levels to create more footfall, so that people will be in a place where they will be able to spend money, and hopefully that will support the businesses that are in there and also the market that will relocate in there. And we've also got plans to bring in some quite, edgy developers. Edgy is probably not the right word, but developers that do some really good work in challenging parts of Manchester, that make desirable properties for people with disposable income that they can come and then spend in Oldham. And as a result of moving the market into the Spindle shopping centre, as a result of moving our offices into the Spindle shopping centre, we'll be able to clear the market site, we'll be able to clear the civic centre site, and then build housing in Oldham, which will be targeted at people that have disposable income that will be able to support the local economy. So there's a huge amount of investment planned over the next few years in Oldham to try and really, develop our town as a place. And, people say, are you going to have any success there? Is it worth it? And we're the last town in Greater Manchester to really invest in our town centre. If you look across at Bury, and people love pointing to Bury and telling me how wonderful it is compared to Oldham, they've invested in new shopping at the Rock with flats above it, so that there are people there that can support the economy. They've created jobs in Bury, which is a similar sized town on the outskirts of North Manchester to what Oldham is. And we want some of that success. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next few years.
Thank you so much, Councillor Fielding, for that. The next question is from Rahila, but she's had to leave because of her assessments. I'll just bring it up. So this question is to Councillor Mushtaq. Do you agree that there is a greater need for more local role models to go out into the community and deliver talks and workshops, inspire disengaged and demotivated young boys so they too can achieve success in children's fields?
Yeah, definitely. Local role models is a great tool to engage other young people, but also with particular emphasis on the last part of your question with young boys who are disengaged already. for them, the local role models have to be someone who comes from their background and knows the struggles that they're going through, and have a story on how they got past that and then became successful. So the local role models is amazing, and it's a great concept to try and disengage young people, but it also has to be targeted and be somebody that the people who need to be engaged can relate to. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, Sama. I'm just looking at the next question. It's from Jannah Begum, and again, it's Sama Khalil. Jannah?
Yes. Since it is the education of young people that has been negatively affected during COVID, with your current role as youth mayor, what do you think we should do to get these young people's thoughts heard?
With getting young people's thoughts heard, especially in Oldham, it's important to note that there's already a number of tools that we can do that. So, for example, we've got our youth council and our youth service, who are constantly doing work to try and get as many young people's voices heard as possible. The Make Your Mark ballot is a national ballot, and that goes in November. And I believe we had the highest engagement this year as well. So Oldham's young people already have a number of tools. In terms of like the young people who don't know about these tools, a great thing to do is to signpost them. So when I was younger, and the reason why I wanted to be youth mayor is I had no idea about the youth council, and I had no idea about all the amazing things that went on in Oldham. And it wasn't until I joined the youth council that I saw a totally different side to Oldham. So when I was younger, I don't know whether I should say this, but I wanted to get as far away as possible, and I think a lot of people my age at the time and still now who don't engage in the community have that sort of thing of, no, all the opportunities are outside of Oldham, there's nothing here. And then when I joined the youth council and saw everything that happens in Oldham, that's when my eyes were really opened. And as youth, that's why I wanted to become youth mayor, to make sure as many young people in Oldham knew about them and realized that, yeah, there's so many actual opportunities that are here in Oldham. So yeah, 100%. The best, one of the best things to do. Yes, there's access. Oh, I see. Brilliant. One of the best things to do is to engage with the services that we already have. So via social media, again, we can go back to that, the digital issue and the digital divide. So some people don't have access to that. But there's a lot of work on the ground as well to engage with the services that we already have in terms of Oldham Youth Service, the Madlow. But also as parents, I think with you guys in particular who have access to Parent Power, asking your children to ask their friends, that's a really good way of gauging more thoughts and getting that feedback through to the people who need to listen. I'll just answer that question as well. How do children join the youth council, and where we find information about it? So Oldham Youth Council on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. You can message them, but also the elections come around every 2 years in all secondary schools in Oldham. So I would definitely encourage your children to go for that. But also, if they don't want to run for election, that's completely fine. We have a separate group that work with the Youth Council called Oldham Youth Council Champions. And you don't have to get elected, but you do a lot of the work and the have access to the opportunities that we get at Youth Council through Oldham Youth Council Champions. Oh, I see, never heard of it. This is the first time. Yeah, I'll admit, before I joined the Youth Council, I didn't know anything about it either. That's really what we're trying to do in the last few years, is make sure everybody in Oldham knows how amazing it is.
Thank you so much, Sama. We just wanted to go back to Javid's question to Councillor Fielding. Are there any developments under consideration to revamp the Oldham Town Centre? I know you answered some of this, Sean, but if you could just recap on that.
Yeah, of course I can, and I missed them out as well, so I can talk about the ones that I didn't say. But we are planning to, so we mentioned Madlow before, didn't we? At the moment, next door to Madlow, there is an indoor climbing centre being built. So that's a new facility that is going to be unique in the northwest of England. And that is to provide a surplus that can cross-subsidise Madlow Youth Zone so that it's less dependent upon council funding. So that's something that's on the ground happening right now. Down at Mumps Bridge, where the tram stop is and the bus depot, we've just secured some funding from the Brownfield Fund, which is a fund that allows us to remediate sites that have previously been developed and bring them forward for housing, which means that we can build houses there rather than having to release greenbelt land, which is something that's been quite contentious over the last few years. So there's housing development set to take place down at Mumps Bridge. As well, there is new housing going to go on a place that's being called Westvale, but it's where Somervale and Crossbank House are, which are the two tower blocks as you come up to Oldham up Manchester Road. So there's new homes being built there. In the town centre, we're going to have a new secondary school built that's going to be sponsored by the Cranmer Trust, which is the trust that operates Bluecoat School. Though their admissions policy at the new school that they want to open in Oldham is going to be more inclusive, because of course Bluecoat is a Church of England school, but the admissions policy they're going to have here will be accepting people from other faiths and none as well. And they have a fantastic record of running really good quality secondary education, so we're really pleased that they put a bid in to open that school. As I've said, we are going to vacate the Civic Centre complex at some point over the next 5 years, and that will be redeveloped for housing. We're going to withdraw the market from Tommyfield Market Hall and move that into the Spindle Shopping Centre and clear that site, and that will be redeveloped for housing. We've got some outside funding from a pot called the Growth Deal, which allows us to improve the public realm, which means the paving and the bollards and the street lights and the one-way systems and things in Oldham Town Centre. And as part of that investment, we're also going to be building a new linear park in the centre of Oldham to make it a more attractive place for those people that might want to live there. I've talked about the development of the new Coliseum Theatre, which will bring a heritage building back into use on Union Street. And also, if anybody gets a tram up to Oldham, if you get off at Oldham Central outside Sainsbury's, there is a building opposite Sainsbury's called the Prudential Assurance Building, which is listed. And it is one of those places that I was talking about before where it's not in our ownership, but it makes the town look tired. And we're taking action against the owner there and hope to try and get hold of it at some point so that we can bring that back into use and redevelop that building. So there's a huge amount of money that's being spent on making Oldham look better and feel better and bring more people into the town centre.
Thank you, Councillor Fielding. Andy Burnham, can you stay a bit longer because we are at 12, or do you need to go?
I do have to leave in a minute, Najma. If there was if anybody wanted to ask me anything before I do, that's yeah, no problem. But I'm afraid I do have to leave you, unfortunately.
Right, okay. Thank you, Andy, for your time. We know it's a Saturday morning and everyone's busy and with their family, so really appreciate you joining us this morning, and we hope you've enjoyed the session as well. I
really have. I think it's, can I just say, I think it's a fantastic sort of forum, isn't it, that you provide, and good to see Debbie and Sean and Shade sort of answering. You know, I just think it's a really good a good forum and a good way to sort of conduct things. I'm honoured that you've had me, so thank you for having me along. It's great to see Sama talking about all the things that are going on in Oldham around young people's voice. I mean, just to say, I'm massively committed to that, and I think, you know, just to, if I could add something, the evidence that we're picking up is the pandemic. You know, when you're our age, you know, and you're kind of sitting at home on a Zoom, okay, the pandemic's been bad, but you can cope with it. I just think you've got to face up to the fact that young people have had their lives completely and utterly derailed and damaged by this, you know, and coming out of it, we've all got to be really, really focused on that from the mental health and well-being point of view, as Debbie was saying before, but also just in terms of, you know, what more support and opportunity we can create. So Sean and I are committed to the Greater Manchester R-Pass, you know, the free bus travel for young people. So we're committing to that going forward. So that's obviously free bus travel for 16 to 18-year-olds. And when the buses get better, that'll be worth even more. But, you know, I think that's the start of it. We just need to, you know, Louise's points about, you know, school uniform, because it's obviously parents having to pay for things for kids as well, isn't it? So the more we can provide, it also has a knock-on benefit for the parents as well, doesn't it, if you can provide that. And actually, because of a lot of the work that was done in Oldham, to be honest with you, around young people in care, there's been some fantastic work that Sean and the council have done. We decided to make the R-Pass, the free bus travel, available up to the age of 21 for young people who've been in care. So we introduced that this year. So yeah, you need to keep challenging us though, Sam. I mean, honestly, I'll come and visit once we're through this. I'll come and visit the council, and we'll talk about what more you need, what more we can do. But I just think we need a massive focus on young people coming out of this. And actually, just to finish, I keep saying this. I can see massive potential in what Sean's doing in Oldham. He's so well placed. Really, look at the city centre and all the opportunities he's got there. Oldham could be the place where there's lots of more affordable housing for people, but then they've got the Metrolink to get to the city. I can see a real bright future because the council is back in the town and is ready to invest in the town and change it. We'll be right behind Sean from a Greater Manchester point of view. We'll be putting our funding in as well to help Sean and the council realise that ambition. So, yeah, it's going to be hard. Well, it has been hard and it will continue to be hard, but some good plans coming through. But thanks, everybody. It's brilliant discussion. And I'll come back. If you ever want me back, I'll come back and see you all again.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Andy.
Okay, cheers, everyone.
Right. I'm just going to move on to our last question, which is from Louise Williams to Councillor Mushtaq. Louise, do you want to come in? Is she there?
Yeah, it's just going back to the first question, but I don't know if I got answered it. I know. What it is it's just about the uniforms and the issues that parents are facing financially. Could there be like a substantial, like say, scheme or something that could be introduced to help out? Like say if a uniform's really good, you could take it back to the shop and say get some sort of money off, or like a scheme, some sort of help with like parents that are.
So it is something.
Sorry.
Yeah, it is something we'll be looking into. I think things like this bill, if it comes in, because what that'll do is it'll give schools guidance. And if you think we've got 112 schools in the borough, and they all have a different take on uniform. Some are indifferent. Some say, you have to get it from a certain shop with a certain logo, things like that. And the example that was given earlier about sports socks and things. So if we can just firm up things like that, it'll just make it easier to have the conversation. And make it easier to get a scheme put in place. Again, I think we need to utilise the third sector. So this one example was VLCIC that I mentioned earlier. They're doing work around clothing and poverty in clothing. So we've had a conversation with them about school uniforms, but again, it's capacity. So it's supporting group. And as you say, creating one scheme. So yeah, definitely. I think once we move out of the situation we're in, and it does tie in with the overall poverty and schooling. Our young people shouldn't be worried about going to school with this stress on their minds. They need to be ready for learning, not worried about what people are going to say or parents worrying about cost of uniforms. This is not a stress or pressure that families should be facing. So yeah, definitely. And if you want to be a part of that, then more than happy for you to be involved as well.
Thank you. Thank you.